And you folks must be doing something right. Oops, go ahead.
You're good. Go ahead.
I was going to chat, but now that we're live, we should go with the meeting.
Oh, yeah, live on YouTube. It's not
Gotcha,
quite
yeah.
there, but
Yeah.
you're good. Go ahead.
I was going to chat, but now that we're live, we should go with the meeting.
Oh, yeah, live on YouTube. It's not
Gotcha,
quite
yeah.
there, but
Yeah.
okay, that's the Zoom meeting.
Are we ready, Ms. Hoeksma? Okay. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the April 7th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. First item on the agenda tonight is the swearing-in ceremony for our new and returning commissioners by Mayor Scully.
Thank you, Chair Sager, and it's a delight to see all of you. I'm just going to go in order, and it's a fairly brief ceremony. So, Commissioner Lynn, if you could raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to inform yourself of the proper duties and functions of your appointments in accordance with state law and city ordinance to fulfill the responsibilities of the City of Shoreline Planning Commission and to represent the public interests of the citizens of Shoreline to the best of your ability?
Yes,
Thank you, and congratulations on your reappointment.
thank you.
Commissioner Mosier, could you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear to inform yourself of the proper duties and functions of your appointment in accordance with state law and city ordinance to fulfill the responsibilities of the City of Shoreline Planning Commission and to represent the public interest of the citizens of Shoreline to the best of your ability?
Yes.
Congratulations and welcome. And finally, Commissioner Brinson, if you could raise your right hand. You probably know what I'm going to say by this point. Do you solemnly swear to inform yourself of the proper duties and functions of your appointment in accordance with state law and city ordinance to fulfill the responsibilities of the City of Shoreline Planning Commission and to represent the public interest of the citizens of Shoreline to the best of your ability?
Yes.
Congratulations and welcome. I just want to add that I started on the Planning Commission. It was an astonishing nearly 10 years ago now, but it was some of the best civic engagement times I've ever had. I mean, I really enjoyed the collegiality and the ability to do a deep dive public comment, which varied from nights like tonight when you have no one to nights when you were going to have 30 people signed up and you're going to hear a lot of fascinating stuff from the citizens of Shoreline. So some people have said this is a thankless job, but I assure you that we on council and city staff are very appreciative of the work you do. And I look forward to hearing all of your recommendations in the years to come. Wish you luck.
Thank you, Mayor Scully. And welcome new and returning commissioners. Next item on our agenda is roll call. Ms. Hoeksma, can you call roll, please?
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Brinson.
Here.
Commissioner Callahan.
Here.
Commissioner Lynn.
Present.
Commissioner Mosier,
Here.
Vice Chair Womashanje,
Present.
and Chair Sager.
Here.
Thank you. And Commissioner Galuska is absent with notice.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any changes they would like to make to the agenda? All right, seeing none. Next on the agenda is approval of minutes from our March 17th, 2022 meeting. Does anybody have any changes that they'd like to make? Okay, seeing none, we will move on. Next is general public comment. Ms. Hoeksma, is there anybody signed up for general public comment?
Thank you. I have no one for this evening.
Great, thank you very much. That brings us to our study item. Item 7A, Transportation Master Plan Update, the draft model plans. And I believe we have Ms. Daly Peng.
Good evening, commissioners. I'm Nora Daly Peng, and I'm the Senior Transportation Planner with the city. Let me share my screen. Okay, can everyone see my PowerPoint? Great. This is my fifth briefing to the Planning Commission on the update to the Transportation Master Plan, which we refer to as the TMP. Tonight, I will present the draft modal plans for transit, shared use mobility hubs, pedestrians, and cyclists. So first, let me start out with what is the TMP. It's a long-range blueprint for multimodal travel and mobility within Shoreline. The last update to the TMP was about 10 years ago in 2011. The TMP update will provide a framework to guide investments in existing and new transportation infrastructure and programs over the next 20 years. In the fall of 2020, the city launched a multi-year process to update the TMP with the goal of adoption by the end of 2022. City staff has and will continue briefing the Planning Commission and the community throughout the process and seek your feedback on the development of the TMP update. The project team is currently preparing to launch Outreach Series 3 in April, from April 19th to May 8th. And we're also developing the draft transportation project list. Let's talk about where we are in the process in context with developing the TMP. Ultimately, the TMP update will include policies, programs, and projects to guide the development of the city's transportation system over the next 20 years. To date, we have inventoried the existing street network and where there are trails, sidewalks, bike facilities, and transit. We have also developed a vision and goal, which I brought to the Planning Commission, I think right before Thanksgiving last year. We are currently defining the type of facilities that should exist for each mode and where they should be, and that is by and large what I'm here to speak to you about tonight. This spring, we will identify where there are gaps between that existing system and the vision and goals for the TMP. From there, we will develop a list of projects needed to fill those gaps and flesh out the TMP's policies and programs. Using the prioritization criteria, which I believe I brought to the Planning Commission last time I met with you, we will use that prioritization criteria to develop a draft prioritized project list and bring that to the Planning Commission early this summer for feedback. Okay. Sorry, my slides just got a little bit out of order. Just wanted, well, I'll just go right into the bike plan. I thought I was going to start with the transit plan, but let me see if I can just catch my slide notes up with myself. Okay. So identifying and working to achieve a complete network of streets that support safe, comfortable, and convenient travel by bicycle and shoreline is an important piece of the overall transportation network. Over the past decade, how we plan for bicycling has evolved. To make communities truly comfortable places to bike, we have shifted our focus to accommodating the types of bicyclists we are trying to serve in context with the traffic speed and volume of the streets. The project team has categorized bike facilities into 4 typical types of traffic stress. Sometimes we refer to this as LTS, and the range is 1 to 4. As you can see from the images, level 1 and 2 tend to be trails, which are fully separated from vehicular traffic, or low volume, low speed streets. Level 3 facilities can be bike lanes along collector or minor arterials, and level 4 facilities include arterials where cyclists must navigate cars, or I should say automobiles. The project team developed a draft vision on how shoreline streets and trails could accommodate bicyclists in terms of level of traffic stress. We are planning for a bicycle network of an LTS 1, 2, 3 at a minimum. LTS 4 isn't on this vision map because LTS 4 cyclists are, we call the strong and fearless, that will bike anytime and anywhere without special accommodations. This vision will inform where it makes sense for the city to invest in higher intensity capital investments, for example, along roadways like 185th Street, and where lower cost traffic calming and signage is sufficient to provide a welcoming environment for cyclists. The project team developed the draft bicycle plan for shoreline that considers how users should be accommodated in terms of the level of traffic stress. I like to explain things in pictures, so my next couple of slides are really changing this map into photographs, and I'll walk you through that. So the draft bicycle plan includes existing and future pedestrian and bicycle bridges, existing and future trails, including the existing trail the existing interurban trail and the future trail along the rail. It also includes existing future trail connections, like the existing interurban Burke-Gilman north and south connectors, as well as the planned 145th off-border bike network, which will help users navigate from trails to their final destinations. While these routes have various bike facility types, they tend to be on low speeds and low volume streets. This spectrum of bicycle facility photos are along streets required to meet a desired LTS level shown back in that vision I showed you a few slides back. So there's a range of bike facilities for on-street conditions, and starting on the left, you see a bike lane. That degree of separation between a cyclist and the road increases as the speed and the volume of the road increases. So if you move your eyes from left to right, you see a buffered bike lane provides some more horizontal separation than just a standard bike lane. And then moving further to the right, there's protected bike lane that actually has some vertical separation as well as horizontal separation. And what I mean by that is you can see a raised curb there separating the roadway itself and this bike lane. And then we move on to the physically separated bike path. This is an example of this facility type in downtown Seattle, where the bike path itself moves up to the sidewalk level, but it is demarcated with different material for contrast and markings. And then finally, the greatest degree of separation, of course, is shared use paths or trails. So I realized I just tried to go with the flow. I'm going to have to switch my PowerPoint because I have a whole PowerPoint for the other modes I talked about. So if you can bear with me for a moment, I think I have to stop sharing and then reshare. My apologies. Okay. I'm not sure what whiteboard is. No, sorry. Sorry about that.
Nora, let me know if you need any help.
Okay, I had to go through my network to bring it up. So I wanted to spare you seeing me go through all the folders. So let's try it again. I apologize. Oh, okay. Here it is. Can everyone see my PowerPoint? This is April 7th. No. All right, let me try again. I apologize. Okay, I hope three times is a charm here. Can everyone see my screen now? Okay, great. Okay, so we're back on track. We're going to talk about the transit mode next. The city is actively working with Sound Transit, King County Metro, and Community Transit to plan effective bus connections to and from the light rail station, as well as throughout the city. Although transit agencies are responsible for determining route locations frequency, and bus stop treatments, the city is advocating for additional transit service on the city's priority corridors to enhance speed and reliability to our community members. The development of the draft transit plan involved identifying the following: priority connections between key destinations, including neighborhood centers and major regional destinations, frequent transit service that connects Shoreline's growth centers to the region and neighborhoods to urban centers and regional transit, preferred travel paths that represent a balance between travel speed and coverage for Shoreline's growth centers and neighborhoods. And finally, appropriate service families that define the desired level of service in terms of the frequency of service by the time of day. Shared use mobility is a fairly new concept to the plan, to transportation planning, and it focuses on developing or providing multiple forms of transportation that people can share either at the same time, like taking a bus, carpool, or light rail, or one after the other, like using a bike share or scooter share. Mobility hubs are places of connectivity where different modes of transportation come together seamlessly at concentrations of employment, housing, shopping, and recreation. It can include space for bike share, scooter share, car share, as well as curb space for ride hailing services like Uber and Lyft. They also can provide creature comforts like public bathrooms, information kiosks, outdoor seating, bike parking, public art, and cell phone recharging stations. To maximize the use of the upcoming light rail and to support car light lifestyles, the city is interested in creating mobility hubs at strategic locations across Shoreline. Last year, the city engaged the University of Washington's Evans School's Consulting Lab to research how shared use mobility hubs can support travel throughout the city. Building on the Evans School's findings, the project team developed this draft shared use mobility hub plan with potential locations for 18 shared use mobility hubs. The proposed mobility hubs are characterized into 3 typologies to inform what features and amenities should be available at each location. Regional hubs are near light rail stations or major bus stations and should have the most features and amenities. They will support the largest amount of people from within and outside of Shoreline. Central hubs, which connect to key locations in Shoreline, and they should have sufficient amenities to support commuting, leisure, and recreation at and around the hub. These hubs might be located near parks, shopping areas, or the community college. Neighborhood hubs are the smallest type of mobility hub and should focus on simple, pedestrian-friendly, and comfortable amenities for the local community. These hubs might be as simple as a pickup drop-off spot for scooter or Lyft, co-located at a bus stop. Now, moving on to the pedestrian plan, the project team developed the draft pedestrian plan as an update to the current pedestrian system plan. Again, I like to show things in pictures. So here's kind of a picture of the pedestrian plan. The draft pedestrian plan shows the city's existing and future sidewalks per the sidewalk prioritization plan. The project team did not propose any additional future sidewalk segments to the draft pedestrian plan because this effort was accomplished through the 2018 sidewalk prioritization plan process as early work for the TMP update. The draft pedestrian plan shows existing trails like the interurban trail and the future trail along the rail. It also shows existing pedestrian and bicycle bridges and the future 148th Street non-motorized bridge. While the city currently has no funding for new or improved pathways through unopened right-of-way, the draft pedestrian plan includes locations of unimproved right-of-way to identify where there might be future opportunities to incorporate new or enhance pathways within the city's pedestrian network. The draft pedestrian plan shows unimproved right-of-way broken into two categories. In red, the unimproved right-of-way associated with future sidewalk projects in the sidewalk prioritization plan. And in blue, the unimproved right-of-way that is not part of a sidewalk prioritization plan project. It is worth noting that the top 7 locations from Outreach Series 2 survey where the community wanted to see new or enhanced pathways through unimproved right-of-way are associated with a sidewalk prioritization plan project. You can reference those blue and green dots on the results map within your staff report. You'll see those 7 locations where people were asking for enhancements to those unimproved right-of-way. And I already talked about the bicycle plan, so we will just move right over to next steps. And here we go. The team is conducting the Outreach Series 3 from April 19th to May 8th. The project team will be developing a draft project list over the next couple of months. And we will return to the Planning Commission in early summer to share what we have heard from the community and debut the draft project list. I thank you for your attention. I welcome the Planning Commission's feedback and questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Team, does anybody have any questions or comments? I don't see any. I do have one. Thank you. Commissioner Callahan, go ahead. Here comes the hands.
Sorry. So I just wanted to say, I thought the pedestrian plan overview was great. How it's really helpful to know how all of these fit together. I think all you have to do is look around and you can see how there's great need for pedestrian improvements. You can look down one street and there's cars neatly parked inside lines and crosswalks, and then another street, it's a mess with no indication of where cars or people should be. So I think, something as simple as painting the lines, just really does a lot to make people feel safer. So I'm glad to see that the potential future opportunities have been identified, because I think it'll be interesting to see what could happen with the upcoming federal opportunity with the bipartisan infrastructure law passed by Congress in September. So this is, once in a generation level of funding. So $5 to $6 billion for local governments to do improvements for safe streets and roads. And there was a fact sheet that just came out, and the types of projects that they're going to be funding, it's these low cost safety treatments, so rumble strips, flashing beacons, better signage, installing safety enhancements, crosswalks, sidewalks. So all of the stuff that we're talking about that currently the city doesn't have funding for, could potentially be done through this grant. So I think it's great that these potential projects have been identified. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Callahan. Commissioner Lynn.
Yes, that's great information, Commissioner Callahan. That sounds so exciting. It's not a question from me. I just had a thought on. I don't know if it will help or improve the plan that you've already presented. I think that is great because we discussed so much on the pedestrian connection or the bike connection to our business area, to our parks. I wonder if it will help residents or public understand and help us understand as well the linkage between like these dots. So if we can highlight those areas that we showing on the map, and so the prioritized, so it sort of help to understand where the prioritizing maybe can happen to help business. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for that comment. And it does, we're kind of at an exciting time in the process because these different parts are coming together. And your comment about prioritizing projects to build that connectivity to places like parks and businesses is something that when I come back to you in early summer, I think we will see the results and have them actually broken down in terms of at least, I'll probably be able to highlight a few examples. I probably wouldn't be able to go through every project scoring, but we'll have some samples to actually show how a project scores on the criteria. And if you recall from the last time I met with the Planning Commission, some of those criteria are centered around connectivity and community vibrancy. And that is where we're actually creating these walk and bike sheds around those key destinations. And if there's projects that fall within those to help build that complete network, then they would get a score for that. So I'm pretty excited that we're turning the corner on this process. And I'm looking forward to bringing that aspect back to the Planning Commission in June.
Thank you. Commissioner Brinson.
Yeah, I've been thinking about how the bike plan and the sidewalk plan sort of interact, and I'm wondering how much sort of thinking there is about the overlay. I mean, one of my experiences is when there's not a sidewalk, walking in the bike lane is better than walking on the street, right? And so
Right.
that like, we talk a lot about complete streets, and when you don't have sidewalks, it's hard to then figure out where everybody fits. And so the overlap of pedestrian bikeways could be an opportunity to think about better some safety. Not ideal, but an interim step.
Yes. I appreciate that comment.
Thank you.
And we are going to be looking at how all the modes are layered. It's kind of, there's the transit mode too, and getting people, some people are walking to transit stops, some people are biking to them. Some people are driving to parking rides and then walking to a stop. So we're definitely taking a layered approach to looking at it. And I do appreciate what you're saying about how those sometimes shared spaces for both pedestrians and cyclists and people in wheelchairs. I have a friend who uses a bike lane to navigate in her wheelchair. So then looking at that. and then looking at potentially some interim projects or low-cost projects that Commissioner Callahan were talking about, I think ties in well with your message to me.
Great, thank you. Vice Chair Ramachandra.
Thank you. I was looking to make a comment on equity, given the fact that you're now looking at policies. That's the stage you kind of said that you're reviewing all the existing policies. And mine is to, as you progress, to really look into the existing policies and see if there are unintended consequences where equity is, because, and I'm piggybacking off of what Commissioner Callahan said about some areas you find sidewalk, others you can't tell where you need to park or walk. So looking at that holistically in terms of our policies to see that there are no unintended consequences where we in fact create inequity in our transportation systems. Probably that's a comment I just wanted to make. And I know you're already doing that because you and I have talked before. The thing I'm really excited about, and this is a comment, is I saw where you're extending the bike lane. It looks like all the way along 185th towards the station, unless I misread that, but it looks like that's what is going on. And I'm excited about that. I like to walk. And when you extend that bike lane, I know that when vehicles pass by and I'm walking when it's raining, we know that Seattle and Shoreline, we have wet, liquid sunshine, then I won't really get wet, okay? So I've benefited from that bike lane. When we share that road that way, we all benefit. The vehicles can go through, bikes can go through, and I, as a person that is walking, I don't get splashed. So I'm really excited about that. So it's kind of selfish, but see me as a regular citizen walking. So thank you so very much for that. Just wanted to thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We will, when we're coming back early this summer, I do think we will also have equity priority areas mapped, because we do have this, the American Community Survey data. We're just working with our staff GIS team to actually develop the maps to show based on age, based on race, based on disability, based on income, and based on language spoken, how those layer together to build kind of concentrations of need, so that we can take a hard look at where are we making the investments in our city. And as you said so eloquently, like, are there some unintended consequences from an equity lens? So I'm really excited to see how those maps shape up and bring them to you, because I think visualizing data is an important way that we can actually take a look and ask some hard questions, I hope, of this project and staff, so that we can, build the best plan that's actually going to serve our most vulnerable community members.
Thank you. Commissioner Mosher.
And more a statement than anything. I was impressed as I was reading the transportation portion of it that the top 3 things people in Shoreline that you surveyed at least were interested in, or their determining factors for transit use, was actually just travel time, number of transfers, and the reliability, which, I mean, it's refreshing because that means everyone's really seemingly interested in using transit. But unfortunately, seemingly some of the aspects that are out of our control, as they're by the transit providers, as opposed to some of the things like safety and cleanliness, which are more you can kind of do from a developmental perspective. So I guess I'm curious, how do we partner with transit agencies to kind of influence that? There's a lot of laughing.
No, it's a very, it may be do some of the other commissioners want to respond, or then I'll take a stab at it. So I was just smiling because I think you're so spot on. It's a need, and then, right, the city itself does not operate the buses or the light rail, but we certainly do work with all of the transit agencies very closely, and we have a vision. So the transit plan, the draft transit plan, is actually a communication tool that we can use to point to when we're working with our partners, our transit partners, Metro and Community Transit and Sound Transit. It's always important to be able to point to something you want. We really do. This is a dynamic time, I shall say. In the next couple of years, we're going to open 2 light rail stations, and we're very excited about that to happen. And at the same time, there needs to be some bus rerouting to really maximize those connections to the light rail and have people start using the light rail as the major trunk line to move north and south through our area. And so you may be aware that Metro right now has, I'm not sure if it's still live, but they're in the process of looking at those bus reroutes, and they had a survey, I think it might have closed March 31st, to ask users what their opinion was on that. We do hope that in this launch of the Outreach Series 3, that's going to start on April 19th, that people will give us some more feedback on transit, on all the modes, but on transit, since this is the topic you were asking about. And then I guess the last way that is really more of a physical investment way that the city can build it so they can come. There's a lot to that. So the 185th corridor that was mentioned earlier tonight, we did a vision, it's called the 185th Multimodal Corridor Strategy. We completed that a couple of years back, and it is a key east-west connection to the future light rail station. And we looked at the right-of-way, and we developed 3 concepts, and the one that prevailed was the one that has dedicated transit lanes at the curbside so that you can build that speed and reliability. So that's what I mean by build it and it will come. The city led that process with the community and the Planning Commission and Council. And if we're put a vision out there to have a cross section with the transit lanes, that is the necessary step in order to get Metro to operate what they call bus rapid transit lines, similar to rapid ride. So I hope that gives you a little bit of flavor of some of the things. I really love talking about transit. So if you have follow-up questions, please ask.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anything else? I just have one question. It says in this staff report that for the next outreach series that you will be endeavoring to engage with more people who are typically underrepresented. What is your plan for that to actually be able to engage those people, those groups?
Thank you for asking that question. So we are endeavoring to put up pop-up posters of all the draft plans that I shared with you tonight, as well as a poster about our prioritization criteria, and have comment cards about those. And they're really designed to be quick comment cards that might take like 5 minutes. And we are going to, they just went to our translation service today to translate them in English. Well, they're in English, sorry, Spanish and Mandarin, so that we can reach more people. And then getting to your question about how are we going to do it. We're really trying to take this approach and changing the dynamic instead of expecting people to come to the city, rather that go to the people. And so if we can find venues where we can put these posters up where people will just encounter them, they will just bump into them because that's part of their daily life, like going to the library or the Spartan Gym or Hope Link or Ronald's Common or high school cafeteria for the high school or middle school. We're hoping that, and maybe the senior center, I'm still working on getting those venues secured, but we really would like to have these posters up for a couple of weeks so that people encounter them. And we will we'll also be trying to schedule some staffing hours for these locations so we can have those organic conversations with people about what they're seeing and what they like and don't like. On top of that, we also will have some spare posters that we're interested in going out and meeting with community-based organizations. And it's all really organically developing, but I want to thank Vice Chair Ramachandra for kind of being a representative from the Planning Commission for this outreach effort. And I still need to circle back with you some more details about how those venues are shaping up, but really very much appreciate your assistance and just talking with our community members and hearing what they have to say. Did you have any, we're also having an online survey so that people can access that and do that at their convenience. And we are producing 3 mini presentations. So tonight, it's my presentation to you, and I'm sorry it was bumpy with those 2 presentations, but I'm going to be recording a PowerPoint presentation. We're trying to keep them at about 5, maybe 7 minutes most, and have kind of 3 themes. Instead of having a big, long 20-minute presentation, have one about the modal plans, another one about the prioritization process, and a third one about what we've learned from the community to date. And we will have those on our project webpage. We are also advertising about this project with yard signs printed in 3 different languages and a QR code that will bring you to the website so that you can take the survey and you can listen to these mini presentations. And as I'm kind of answering your question, I realized we should probably put a list on where those venues are for the pop-up posters so that people can find them that way too. If you have any questions or would like to help get the word out, please don't hesitate to ask.
Great, thank you. I have a couple of ideas, but I'm not gonna, I can contact you later. But I appreciate, it sounds like, yes, you really are going the extra mile, and I appreciate that. And like I said, I will contact you because I also have some thoughts on that. So thank you.
I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any other closing thoughts, questions? Great. Well, thank you again. Once again, this is, I know, a big task. This is super important. I mean, with light rail and all these things. So we appreciate your continued visibility and sharing with us and keeping us up to date. And we look forward to continued communication with you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for your questions and feedback.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. All right, great. Next on the agenda, study item 7B, the MUR 70 Zone Development Code Amendments.
All right, good evening. Can you all see my screen? Great. Okay, so I'm here tonight to discuss the latest draft of the zoning or development code amendments rather to the MUR 70 zone. And I guess before launching into context, this is I think the fourth or fifth time we've been talking about MUR 70 zone, and this is kind of the narrowing the scope some on in terms of the code amendments, and hope to present the changes based off of the feedback tonight that we heard last time. So real quickly, just for context, so this is the 145th station area. The areas in teal here are the MUR 70 zoned properties. So those are the areas that we're talking about this evening in which these development code amendments would apply. So this is the Shoreline South Station, due to open in 2024. They're in kind of the middle of the map area. And then on the north side of town is the 185th station area. Again, the MUR 70 zone or mixed use residential 70 zoned areas are in teal there. And the Shoreline North Station is kind of along I-5 there. So last time this topic was before you was on the January 20th meeting. And so since last time, we've refined the code amendment some. And so to summarize, there was at the last discussion, some consensus amongst the Planning Commission on a willingness to proceed with parking reductions beyond 25%. So we have in there 50%, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then also there was some consensus to remove the development agreement requirement entirely. And then where more feedback or information was being requested, the topic around building height and scale and just sort of some visuals and some context around that was requested, as well as a little more comparison on the height and the process of other cities. And so we've been doing some comparison research of other cities in the region that have either existing light rail stations or have planned for light rail that's going to be open with Eastlink or the Linwood Link extension. So we'll get into that here in a minute as well. Also, since last time, back in March, we met with our developer stakeholder group, and we shared with them the draft concepts and code amendments and asked for their input. They were engaged last year as we were sort of refining the scope of just looking at code amendments in general for the MUR 70 zone. So it was good to bring these back to them, kind of share the progress that we've made to date after the joint meeting that was held between the council and commission last fall, and then kind of the subsequent discussions that the Planning Commission has had. So we shared that progress and the draft concepts in terms of the code amendments. A lot of their feedback was sort of the same as it's been. It's kind of reiterating the same themes, particularly around high-rise construction, that the market for high-rise and shoreline is just not here yet. But that's not to say it won't be someday. And so I think there was some receptiveness to, in recognition that the city's, taking some proactive steps, thinking ahead for when the market is positioned, that there's a mechanism and there's some standards in place to achieve high-rise construction. And a couple other key points from them, obviously, from a developer standpoint, streamlining process is always a positive thing. Time is money, especially with the development agreement process. That's a legislative decision. And so that introduces arguably some level of risk in addition to time, just that it's ultimately a council decision, even though there are standards there. Obviously, when you're holding additional hearings and there's additional bodies making that decision, there's some level of uncertainty there. And then, of course, parking reductions, again, from a development or developer standpoint, the ability to reduce parking further is always beneficial, reducing some of that cost to construct parking, especially when it's within a structure, can be costly. And so getting into the draft code amendments, and again, just as a reminder, so the parking reductions, these are what's in your packet tonight, substantially the same as what you saw at the January 20th meeting. Again, there seemed to be some consensus from the commission that that what was being proposed at that time was pretty much hitting the mark. So what the amendments would allow in the MUR 70 zone would be a reduction of up to 50% of the parking, of the minimum parking ratio. And so again, we regulate minimum parking standards in terms of stalls per unit or stalls per square foot of commercial area. And so the code amendment would allow up to a 50% reduction. We have it written to where it's applicable to somewhat larger developments. So this wouldn't be a small, like 12 unit apartment development. This would need to be an apartment development of 100 units or more, or a commercial development of 10,000 square feet or larger. And the condition to get to that 50% reduction would be to provide a transportation demand management plan where they're looking at the surrounding land use context, surrounding improvements, uses and everything, and developing ways to minimize some of that demand on the parking to mitigate or to offset the need to provide parking. And so in exchange, they would be granted a reduction in the minimum. So currently our code allows a maximum of 25% reduction when you're within a quarter mile of high capacity transit. So that would be applicable to both light rail stations, as well as the Aurora corridor where we have bus rapid transit. And so this amendment would extend to all of the MUR 70 zone up to 50%. And then in your packet in attachment C, I believe it is, there's a lot more visuals, but we tried to capture, to convey a sense of scale and I guess magnitude of the building height examples, finding local examples. And so we included the locations and the names where they were available. If anyone felt so inclined to go hop on transit and go check any of these out in person. So we have a few shoreline examples in there, as well as some local examples in and around Seattle. Again, these are approximate height levels or building heights just based on the number of stories. So for context, 6 to 7 stories is generally going to get you in the range of 70 feet. So this would be kind of baseline for the MUR 70 zone. This is the new development near Shoreline Place on Westminster and Aurora. It's the big triangle property. It's called The Current, and this just opened relatively recently, I think last fall or maybe late summer. And then going up to 9 to 10 stories is approximately 100-foot range. This is a building in Seattle. So again, just attempting to convey again scale and context relative to maybe surrounding buildings. So we see, like in this picture to the right of the building is looks like a 4-story office building or something. So hoping at least to illustrate some of that. And then getting up to 12 or 13 stories is approximately 140 feet. And so that right now is where the MUR 70 zone would max out. So the maximum height, we're not proposing to change that. Right now, as you know, it's structured to where you would need to have an approved development agreement in order to go up to the full maximum of 140 feet. And this is another example of retirement community building in Seattle. Again, kind of in that 12 or 13-story range. And then our comparison, so these are the same cities we've been looking at for comparison with regard to parking ratios. Like I mentioned, these are other cities in the area that have either existing light rail stations, in the case of the 2 Seattle stations, or our neighboring cities to the north that'll be receiving light rail at the same time that we do in 2024 with Mount Lake Terrace and Linwood, and then Bellevue will open as part of the East Link extension in the Spring District. So what this shows is the maximum achievable building height on the top row there, and then in a very generalized fashion, the process to which you would get to that maximum height in the second row there. So generally speaking, everyone in this table of the cities we've compared, except for Mount Lake Terrace, you essentially are allowed the maximum height by right. There's additional administrative process to work through. In some cases, there may be additional or a public meeting or neighborhood meeting or things. Certainly in the case of Seattle, where there's independent design review boards or commissions that look at those, but they're not always necessarily looking at the uses and the development standards per se. And so again, just for some comparison's sake, attempting to summarize really what the process is to get to the maximum heights. So with all of that information, to summarize some of the refinements we've made to the draft amendments since last time. Again, base height stays as is. We've changed that since last time. I think when we were here in January, we were presenting to move that base height up slightly. After kind of examining that more, it got pretty clunky. We were attempting to measure the height in both feet and stories in some instances. From an administration standpoint, that gets really difficult. And what it was also doing, we found we have existing incentives for developments that retain significant trees. And we didn't want to take away value from that. And so that was another key component of just saying, you know what, let's just keep the base height as is rather than trying to move it up at all. So the existing significant tree incentives, if you call them that, where you can go to 80 feet, I think if you save 10% of the significant trees, and then up to 90 feet if you save 20%, those are all staying the same in this latest iteration. Going above 70 feet would still require additional standards, additional performance requirements of the development. And that would be for, I'll get into detail on those in a second, but those would be for any developments that are not taking advantage of our existing deep green incentive program as well. There's a height incentive in there. So these additional standards, which I'll hit on, they would apply to anyone that's not utilizing the significant tree incentives or the deep green incentive program incentives. And we've removed the requirement entirely for a development agreement. I would still remain as an optional process should someone want to have a larger development they want to phase in over many years, or if there was some other reason that they wanted to seek that would still remain an option. And the maximum height, as I mentioned, would stay at 140 feet. But what's changing is really how you get to 140 feet. So what we've done is we've written in to where if you want to go above 70 feet, you're not taking advantage of one of those incentives I mentioned. You need to provide hold rather a neighborhood meeting. And this is keeping in the spirit of the environmental analysis and some of the discussion in the sub-area plans when they were adopted in 2015 and 16. You know, in the context of development agreement discussions in those plans and in the environmental impact statements talked about a public process to get to that additional height. We want to respect that, and we want to be mindful that someone can't just file an application for a 140-foot building and there's no additional process. It's just allowed outright, and they get their building permit and go on their way. So we felt it would be appropriate to have a requirement for a neighborhood meeting. It would follow our existing standards for neighborhood meetings where property owners within 500 feet of the site would get notified, and the meeting would be held prior to application. And it's really an opportunity for the applicant to share what the development is, get input, and hopefully incorporate some of those comments and feedback that they receive into the design before they file application with the city. And then their next step would be to obtain or file application and then get approval through our existing administrative design review process. This is an administrative process. It's a director's decision. However, there's a little more review involved with that. It's not jumping straight to building permit. This is where the city would have an opportunity to review the building design, review it for compliance with the standards that I'll talk about in a minute here, as well as any other design standard departures. This is our typical process. So we find a lot of developments go through this process anyway, when they're seeking departures for things like even minor things like landscape departures and whatnot. They go through this process, and that's a mechanism for which we review and would issue a decision on those. So we would follow that same process for buildings wanting to go above 70 feet. So the requirements to go above 70 feet, these are sort of additional requirements that you would need to meet in exchange for that additional height. So these are being kind of brought into the code as requirements from the development agreement section. So these are somewhat either the same or revised from what's existing on the books right now. So right now you can get to 140 feet if you do the development agreement and do all this extra stuff. Again, we're removing the development agreement requirement, and we're saying you still need to do these things. It's just not the added process. And through that, we're also suggesting we tweak some of the additional standards. So I'll go through those. So there's an additional affordable housing requirement that's a little more, and it's a little deeper level of affordability than our existing mandatory requirement. That's staying the same as what's currently there. So that's that top line there, 20% of the units affordable at 60% of the area median income. And then a development, we need to choose one of the following, either 10,000 square feet of commercial space, or 30% of the ground floor would need to be devoted to neighborhood amenities, such as providing nonprofit office space. Restaurant space is called out as a neighborhood amenity there, or other community type function areas. That commercial square footage is being proposed to be taken down. It's written as 40,000 square feet currently. We feel that it's appropriate to bring that down some to really respect that, we don't want to force commercial space or force things that perhaps the market can't support at this stage. It's something that we could always revisit in the future. But 10,000 square feet is, the size of a drugstore, like a Walgreens or a Bartell's or something of that size or scale. just to give you a sense of what that could potentially be. And we feel that 40,000 square feet would be maybe a bit much. And then in addition, there'd be some park, plaza, or open space that would need to be provided. This would be in addition to the existing open space requirements. We're proposing to revise the, I think it's 2% of the building valuation be provided to, I think for park space, I don't have the exact amendment right in front of me, but we're proposing to change it to 1% for art or placemaking amenities on the site. And I gave you $1 for comparison or for illustration in the staff report based off of a recent building permit valuation that we processed. And then last, they would need to provide some sub-area improvements. So this could be in the form of off-site frontage improvements. If there's an existing sidewalk gap or something a block or two away, they could provide some improvements there. They could provide wayfinding signage, transit stop enhancements. If there's a deficiency in utilities that could be kind of viewed as an extra improvement for the sub area, that would be another item there. And what we're proposing to remove entirely, the development agreement, as I mentioned, there's a provision for the development of the LEED Gold. It's a mandatory requirement that all of the new development in the station areas be built to Built Green 4-star or better. What we're finding with our Deep Green incentive program currently is several of these developments are building to LEED Platinum, and they're in exchange able to tap into some additional incentives for fee reductions and things like that. We just felt that this was a little bit redundant and not really necessary. And then along similar lines, structured parking, there's a provision in there that says 90% of parking needs to be in a structure. Again, I think just market forces right now are sort of driving that. There's not really a need to have it in here. The purchase of transfer of development right credits. We don't have a TDR program currently. It's actually on the Planning Commission's work program later on this year. We'll be bringing forth a package of amendments for TDR program in tandem with the LCLIP program. And so we're essentially removing this for now. There might be opportunity to put something back in, or it'll potentially be a standalone program. But again, why have something here, kind of another layer of complexity? We don't really have a program to administer it. And then district energy. Again, we have past studies and reports to show that this isn't really feasible on like a development by development basis. And so just felt that really it's not appropriate to have in here as a requirement per se. There's nothing that would preclude a larger development from creating some broader district energy options that other developments could tap into, but just didn't feel that it's appropriate as a requirement. So next steps, we're seeking feedback and discussion tonight, and from there we'll dive into preparing and getting into the weeds on the SEPA analysis for this, the State Environmental Policy Act, and doing the environmental review, and hoping to come back and schedule a public hearing in the next couple of meetings or so, at which time the commission could potentially make a recommendation onto council at that time. And so with that concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bauer. Group, do you have questions or comments, feedback? Commissioner Brinson.
Probably more of a learning question. For the affordable housing requirement that we have in place, is there, I mean, the way it's worded, I'm assuming it's for rental housing. Are we doing something if we have a condominium development? Is there an option for affordability in that type of development?
You're correct. Right now, it is for rental housing, and we don't have any provision for owner-occupied housing at this point.
Thank you. Commissioner Mosher.
Yeah, I really appreciated that you all simplified it to have it just be in feet, because it's challenging enough with the building codes. It's already articulated so much of construction types and heights and all that, so there's no need to add complexity. And I also think it was smart to lower the square footage of commercial use. It's hard enough, I think, in most buildings, probably even in shoreline, to fill 10,000 feet, let alone 40. For my own clarity, that's when we're talking about that, that's total area too. It could be subdivided into smaller spaces. It's not like it has to be one 10,000 square foot drugstore or what have you, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So it's written, I believe, as gross square feet. And so that
Okay.
could be sliced and diced into different tenant
Excellent.
spaces.
It's actually a rather nice size. You can get 3 or 4 good businesses out of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Commissioner Callahan.
Yes. So the table 1 on page 26, I thought that was great that you pulled this together with the other local cities around us. So with the process, it says, we require public hearing, council decision, same as Mount Lake Terrace. So that is like the most intensive, time-consuming process. And then the less intensive would be the public notice and director decision. Is that the right way to read that then?
Correct. Yes.
And then what we're proposing is the same public notice and director decision, or is this neighborhood meeting a different kind of thing from public notice?
You could view it as a form of public notice, and oftentimes there will be other process types that may require public notice. And so, yeah, the neighborhood meeting, though, ensures that all of these would go through that minimum level of, you get the notification. Oftentimes developments, they provide a website or something where you can go on and view, especially in these times where everything's been virtual. So even if you can't attend the neighborhood meeting, you can at least get a sense of what the development is.
And then I was also wondering about the 500 feet, like where does that come from? Like if someone is not within 500 feet, they can't come to the meeting, or how does that work exactly?
Yeah, so the 500 feet, that's an existing provision in our code. And so it basically requires property owners within 500 feet of the site to be provided notice to. Anyone can attend the meeting. It's not exclusive by any way. It's just kind of the minimum level of notification that needs to be done.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm really excited about all of these changes. And I think, this has been a lot of hard work, and I think this is really good. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lin.
Yeah, I just have a really quick question. Just curious about from the table that you prepared about the neighbor city with a comparison of maximum building height. So there are listed Seattle 2 stations, Northgate and Roosevelt. I'm curious on the 145th station. So on the Seattle side, do we know their maximum building height, right, surrounding the station area? So that I just curious compare on the Shoreline side and on the Seattle side. And my second question is on, I recall that there was a discussion on maybe getting some feedback from with discussion with the developers or some of the like from kind of from another side of the community. It's not the residents. Are there any feedback that you can share with us? Thank you.
Yeah, if I may just respond to the, I guess your first question on the height on this on 145th on the Seattle side. Much of that area is the golf course right there, but I know that City of Seattle is embarking on some station area planning on their own, and so we've been following that as it's been progressing, and so we could definitely share more of that information with you if you'd like. Right now, I think it's predominantly zoned single family residential. It sort of mirrors what shoreline zoning was, but I believe that there's some intention, perhaps, I don't want to get ahead, but they're going to be considering some changes there. And then in terms of, feedback, so we did, like I mentioned, we shared the draft amendments with the developer stakeholder group that we convene quarterly. It's been a little less often during the pandemic, but so some of that feedback is included in the staff report. And so, that's been the extent of the feedback we've sought so far on this process.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, thank you. I just want to say thank you. I know this is a big undertaking. I appreciate the changes, and I'm glad we're moving forward with this, and feels like we're going to be able to wrap this up, and that's exciting. It's progress. So thank you. All right. That being said, we will move on then to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business tonight? None. Okay, that takes us to new business. Item 9A is the Planning Commission Rules of Procedure update for hybrid meetings.
Yeah, so this item, and the Assistant City Attorney is here this evening as well, if she has any additional info on this, but it's proposed changes to the Planning Commission's Rules of Procedures. And so there's a handful of housekeeping amendments in here, but really the substantive change here would be amendments to mirror what the council has adopted for their rules to allow for hybrid meetings. And so, as you know, the world's reopening, and so we're hoping to get back in person. And so this essentially outlines some of the technical procedures around that. And so I believe really what this boils down to is the intention would be that the Planning Commission would be meeting fully in person again in the near future, with the option with prior approval to attend remotely in sort of a hybrid fashion, as well as to allow for public participation in a hybrid fashion as sort of the default as well. So during public comment, residents or anyone from the public could continue to provide comment either through the virtual platform or by phone, in addition to in person.
Excellent. I appreciate that. Thank you. Anybody have any comments on that? Everything's clear? Commissioner Callahan.
I just wanted to say that I very much support this. I think it's great. The world has changed, and it's been proven now that we can do this. Of course, it'll be great to, be in person, but obviously, things come up, and I would really appreciate the chance to join remotely if I had to. And I also just want to say I strongly support staff joining remotely. There's no reason why you can't do your presentations remotely. And I think if it in any way adds to work-life balance, convenience, I'm just strongly in favor of that. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments they'd like to make? Great. Thank you, Mr. Bauer. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so this is, I do believe this does require action for you to formally adopt the changes just before we move on.
So do we vote or do we?
You need to, hi, this is Julie Ainsworth Taylor. Somebody needs to move, and then the second, and then you would vote to take your vote on it.
Thank you. Somebody like to make a motion? Commissioner Callahan.
I can try here. So I moved that to amend the rules of procedure as written in attachment A of the staff report dated April 7th.
Great. Do I have a second?
I second.
Great. All right. Thank you. Let's bring that to a vote then. I believe
All
Ms.
right.
Hoeksma.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Chair Sager,
Aye.
Vice Chair Wamashonte,
Aye.
Commissioner Mosier,
Aye.
Commissioner Lynn,
Aye.
Commissioner Callahan.
Aye.
And Commissioner Brinson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Great. All right. That is passed 6-0. Thank you very much. All right. That brings us to the election of the chair and the vice chair. And I believe Ms. Hoeksma.
Right. I'm up already.
Yes.
Okay, so according to the rules of procedure, the chair and vice chair term of office are for 1 year. And a commissioner may serve as chair or vice chair for no more than 2 consecutive years. However, the time spent fulfilling a vacated term shall not count toward the 2 consecutive term limit for the chair and vice chair. So Chair Sager and Vice Chair Wamashonte, the 3 months that you just served don't count toward those two years. Okay. So at this time, all the commissioners are eligible to be nominated for chair or vice chair. And here are some of the rules from the bylaws that you may have read through. I don't know. But the election of chair will be conducted by the clerk of the Planning Commission. No one commissioner may nominate more than one person for a given office until every member wishing to nominate a candidate has had an opportunity to do so. Nominations do not require a second. So the clerk will repeat each nomination until all nominations have been made. And when it appears no one else wishes to make any further nominations, the clerk will declare the nominations closed. A motion to close the nomination is also not necessary. So after nominations have been closed, the voting for the chair takes place in the order nominations were made. And I will ask you to raise your hand in Zoom, and then I will name them off at the end. Because we're in Zoom. Let's see. And then if that's not if we don't reach a majority, then we'll go on to the next nominee until we get one. All right. And we won't be taking a vote on nominees that are remaining after we get a majority. And after that, upon election, the chair that we vote in will then conduct the election for the vice chair in the same manner. So any questions on the rules before no? So I will open the floor now for nominations for the Planning Commission chair. Commissioner Callahan. Oh, you're muted.
I'm still muted. I nominate Pam Sager.
Okay. Any other nominations? Oh, I have a nomination for Commissioner Sager. Any other nominations? All right. It appears we don't have any more, so I will ask for a vote. Well, actually, I will ask you to raise your Zoom hands. Okay, thank you so much. That is 6 raised hands, so we don't have to continue voting. And Chair Sager, you will take over and for the vice chair election.
Great. All right. Thank you. Okay. We will now open the floor for nominations for the Planning Commission vice chair. Commissioner Lynn.
I would like to nominate Commissioner Ramachandran.
Thank you. Commissioner Ramachandran has been nominated. Are there any other? Commissioner Ramachandran?
I would like to nominate Commissioner Callahan.
Thank you. Commissioner Callahan has been nominated. Do we have any other nominations? All right, seeing none, then the nominations are closed. We will start first with Commissioner Ramachandran. If you would like to vote for Commissioner Ramachandran, please raise your Zoom hand. Thank you. I see 5 Zoom hands. That is a majority. So we will stop the voting at this point. Commissioner Ramachandran, you have been appointed vice chair.
Thank you.
Thank you all. All right, moving on. Reports of committees and commissioners or any announcements. I would just like to say that I attended a workshop last week called I just had it too. Crash course for the chair. Thank you. So it was a workshop on being chair. It was really good. It was put on by Jurassic Parliament. It was very informative. There's lots of good information, lots of good materials. So I look forward to improving my skills and serving you guys well and leading the best that I can. All right, moving on. The agenda for next meeting, April 21st.
Yeah, so the agenda for April 21st is the cottage housing introduction. There'll be a briefing on the cottage housing development code regulation amendments that we'll be launching into here in the near future.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. That brings us to the close of our meeting. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Great work today.